there's a part of law that's called a prior restraint on your rights, and that is a prior restraint means that you don't have to ask permission from anyone to exercise a right. So if you have a right to sell your speech, your personal speech, not when you rise to the level of commercial activity, like you're doing a bunch of advertising, you have a staff, you have all of these things, but if it's you, the small guy, you have a right to be in the public forum and selling your speech. It's no different than someone coming along and just giving you some money of one friend to another who's in need. So anyways, without getting into the details of all of that stuff, I want to read this to you. This is I'm going to turn the comment thing off of there just to show. Of course, this is backwards the way that the video works, but this is a letter from Mary Manrose. At the time, she's no longer mayor there, but was the mayor of Scottsdale, and this was in 2008, to the Honorable John McCain, U.S. Senator. Dear Senator McCain, we are in receipt of the correspondence from Mr. Caudell, which was received in your office on May 23, 2008. Thank you for forwarding this to my attention. Mr. Caudell has been communicating with our legal department regarding this issue for quite some time. I've taken the liberty of sharing your correspondence along with the attachments from Mr. Caudell with our legal department for follow-up. Thank you for referring this matter to the City of Scottsdale. Sincerely, Mary Manrose. And then it's CC'd to J. Osborne, Senior Assistant City Attorney, Legal Department. Now, I've got a whole stack of letters from other cities that I was engaging as well. Now, what's behind this was in the park in Scottsdale when I heard that they were arresting artists for attempting to sell their paintings and works in the park, and requiring them to have business licenses, and then charging outrageous amounts and making them jump through all these hoops and everything else, which kind of amounts to, we don't want you to speak. And this is another reason why I'm an independent, and I'll tell my Republican friends, this is the reason why I'm independent. It's because the pendulum swings too far. As a songwriter, I've got a song called Same BS, Different Pile. And that's kind of the way that it goes. So here's the response that after Senator McCain got involved, and I can show you some correspondences back and forth on that as well, but I won't get into that because this letter response from Scottsdale. Here's ones from Surprise, have them from Tim P. And I would bet you in Scottsdale right now, probably the new mayor came in and said, whoa, what's this? Why are we not charging artists having to have business licenses and stuff? And guess what? If I went to Scottsdale, tried to set up and do my FlintKnapping in the park and sell some of my pieces, their police officers would come along, threaten to arrest me. I don't have to be arrested. All they have to do is threaten to arrest me. And now I have a long track record of them saying, you're right, but that probably won't happen because what they do is they have a database. They'll type my name in there and it'll come up, leave him alone, don't bother him. The chief would be on the phone right away. But they'd go after somebody else for selective enforcement. But the difference between them and me is I'm armed with knowledge. I'm armed with case law. So anyways, this is the letter. Dear Mr. Caudell, this letter responds to questions you have raised about whether you can engage in certain artistic activities and performances in City of Scottsdale public parks, and it's parenthesized parks, and whether you need to obtain any kind of permits or licenses prior to doing so. It also addresses whether and under what circumstances you may sell your art in the parks. It is my understanding that you engage in FlintKnapping, which my research indicates is the creation of arrowheads, spear points, and axe blades out of rock by striking it with another rock or piece of ivory. You create, frame, and sell these items. It is also my understanding that you're a musician performing as Testing Grounds Band. and in connection with this performing you wish to sell CDs of your music. Your FlintKnapping and musical performances will be referred to in this letter as art. The city recognizes that various forms of artistic creativity and speech are protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and may be engaged in performed or expressed as applicable in what is legally considered to be a public forum such as public park. The city will assume for the purpose of your inquiry and this response only that when you are engaging in your art, it is afforded First Amendment protection. You are not therefore subject to city's requirements that you obtain a business license or other city permit or license before engaging in these activities. You may also offer your art for sale in parks. You do not need to obtain any kind of licensing or permit from the city prior to engaging in the sales of the items you have created. Although you would not be subject to the city's general business licensing requirements in respect to your art, you may be subject to various reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions, which is true. For example, you may not perform your art and or sell it in park property outside of the park hours or in a manner that would unduly burden public services or cause a public disturbance. All true and acceptable. In the event that there is a scheduled event being conducted in a park, you may not interfere with it. In such instances, the city may designate an area in which you may engage in your art and sale of it as applicable. The designated area will be one in which you may still have reasonable exposure to those attending the event. Example, in the vicinity of the entrance to the event. Now, I don't know if any of you know, but the Scottsdale Arts Festival is absolutely huge. And they're telling me I've never been there yet. I haven't taken them up on that because I was just demonstrating for others' rights. When you engage in your art in the park and or sales of it, you may use items that are reasonably necessary to do so. Example, chair, small table. When doing so, however, you are expected to comply with all state, federal, and city laws in that regard. For your information, I am enclosing copies of Scottsdale Revised Code, SRC, Section 2 through 31, General Rules for Use, would depend on the nature and scope of any display you erect, equipment that you use in your activities other than small items noted above, which was all reasonable. Sales of your art would likely be subject to the city's transaction privilege tax. I'm enclosing a City of Scottsdale transaction sales and use tax. Okay, and it says, in this regard, the city is not giving you a legal opinion about whether sales of your art are taxable. If you sell your art on public property or anywhere else for that matter, however, and fail to collect and pay taxes in connection with those sales, you may be subject to enforcement action by the taxing authorities, regardless of whether you complete and return an application for a sales tax license. However, you may engage in your art, including sales of it, without first obtaining any kind of city license or permit. During the time that our office has been considering your question, the Scottsdale Police Department has directed its officers not to take any enforcement action. In the event that you were to engage in your art or sales of it in the city parks. Now I have to stop reading there for just 1 second and make this note. It was like 3 months before Senator McCain and I got things ironed out and the case law looked over, researched, everything else. 3 months. And Scottsdale never told me that they advised the police officers not to come in contact with me. In fact, I have a recording still of a sergeant from the Scottsdale Police Department telling me, well, we have the right to tell you to leave and could put you in arrest because we have the right to prevent criminal activity from happening. Oh, really? Now, some people thought that I sued Scottsdale and I got a settlement and all this other stuff. I didn't. For me, a lifetime ability to get into the Scottsdale Arts and Crafts Festival there, which people have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get into that. That's settlement enough. But that wasn't the real reason of doing it. The real reason of taking these cities on is to show them, to show the mayors and these people of how far we've drifted in cities' desires to try to get money out of people for their freedom of speech, to make money off of speech. And these things are it says well settled. And it's not just the Ninth Circuit. My friend Sean Christensen, they arrested him for selling his art in the park, and this was in the 10th Circuit. And so we would spend hours on the phone going back and forth, and while he was preparing his case. And Steve White, who had White versus Sparks, that was upheld in the Ninth Circuit. That was Sparks, Nevada. They tried taking him to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court refused to hear the case, so it stands. And it was also cited. We side with our sister courts, the 7th Circuit, the 5th Circuit, the 3rd Circuit. So this isn't just the 9th Circuit, and this is the point. Is in the 10th Circuit, extremely conservative, right? So there's Sean Christensen, and he's in the lower courts and in the federal court system, and he's fighting against the city himself, pro per, no attorney. And there's another thing people don't understand is they think, oh, they're going to be out to sue, and there aren't any attorneys, very, very, very few, because back during the Bush administration, they made it really difficult for anybody to be a civil rights attorney. And to be frank, they don't teach them the truth about things and all the case law. They don't learn about the case law in school. A reason why Professor Steve Gonzalez would encourage me to become an attorney. I didn't become an attorney, but he would encourage me to. Because they just don't believe it. City attorneys, all of them, they just think, no, if there's commercial activity, money's changing, we got a right to be there and demand a licensing. And they don't understand what speech is, and the sale of speech is protected. So, pure speech, not commercial speech. So this judge told Sean Christensen was citing Steve's case, White versus Sparks, Nevada, Barry versus LAPD, Perry versus LAPD, Barry versus Los Angeles, New York, all these different court cases and case law in different circuits, and the judge says, do you see palm trees out of that window? Like it was just some liberal thing. So it went all the way up to the 10th Circuit. Sean Christensen won. Sean Christensen just took $1 for payment, and for I think it was 3 years of battle in the battle in that city, they spent millions trying to fight him with their high-powered attorneys and everything else. So this is what you can do. And this is the thing with Antifa and all this stuff, doing the violent protesting, all this stuff. You don't need to do all that. If you want to make a point and you're right about your point, do it the smart way. Find case law, challenge, use the court system, protest like I did and like we did, where you go and you sit there and you subject yourself. Now with him and some of these others, they go ahead and arrest me. Not me. I don't need to do that, because the law states that if your civil rights are withheld for even a minimal amount of time, irreparable damage has occurred and no further action need be proven to go forward. So anyways, so I just wanted to point out, for those 3 months, they just said, oh, the police department and all them was told, don't come and yeah, right. Then how come they didn't tell me, oh, you're welcome to come back and do this? No, they don't. It was crickets, me continually. Why? Because those attorneys, they know you're right. When they finally figure out that you're right and you know what you're talking about, and they look at the case law and they go, oh, man, we violated his civil rights by telling him, you leave now or we're going to put you in handcuffs. And he had it recorded on a recording. And then he's recording the sergeant and the officers going, well, yeah, we did that because we have a right to, because a crime was going to be committed. So it says, we directed our officers not to take any enforcement action in the event that you were to engage in your art or sales of it in the city parks. Now, it's not just the parks. It's also other public places as well, so long as you're not in the way of businesses. You see businesses that put the coat racks and all the stuff out on the public, out on the sidewalks out in front of their business. They don't own that sidewalk. That sidewalk belongs to you and everybody else. And if they're encroaching on that, well, you have a right to show up before they do one day and sit there and do the same damn thing. The police department will also be advised not to do so in the future if your activities are limited to your art and sales of it. I recommend that in the event that you choose to do so now or sometime in the future, however, you carry a copy of this letter with you to show the police if they make inquiries about your activities. Why? Why do I have to carry a copy of this? Why would I? Or is it going to be, well, we know that some other mayor may come in down the road and change everything back, which is what they continue to do. Last time, I think it was 2 years ago, I had to go to Tempe and straighten them out again because they were doing the same damn thing. And guess what? Old junior security guard called in the police and everything else, and it was a big deal, man. They were going to arrest me. I even said, I got a letter from Senator McCain. I've already dealt with this stuff with you guys with Tempe, and I even called you guys up ahead of time to make sure with the oh, you know, what are you citing Senator McCain for, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Man, I was packing up my stuff, demonstrating my FlintKnapping and stuff. This was right before Christmas. I wasn't going to be making any money. You know, a few dollars. I'm mostly demonstrating as showing people how to do FlintKnapping. So, it just so happened, as I was really pissing off this other police officer who showed up as a rookie and this other guy, and then sitting there mad dogging me, waiting, all of a sudden I was like, I'd like to see a supervisor. I'd really like to see a supervisor, you know. And so eventually the supervisor come up, and he was a cop, one of the cops who dealt with me years before with this stuff, and he's telling him, hold on, whoa, back up, hold on. It was funny. He's all backing him up, and Mr. Caudell, you know, blah, 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 we're sorry that this is, you know. And I guess what? I could have had that security guard. I could have had his job, and I didn't, because I made a point right then and there, and to those other officers. Now, I also called up the city attorney the next day. Guess what? The city attorney that I dealt with before, he became the mayor, I believe, or the something of Tempe. I can't remember. His name's Andrew Chang. So I called up, and his deputy assistant attorney, who I dealt with years before, was now the city attorney, and he was like, well, we're sorry. And in each one of these instances, they flat out asked, what do you want? What do you want? And in each instance, I haven't asked for a dime. Sean Christensen got asked for $1. The city had to pay millions, and guess what? They didn't want the taxpayers to know that. Well, I'm sure they didn't tell them all the amount they spent in money. This is why I'm an independent, because the Republican side, the Democrat side, it's the same BS, different pile. But you, the individual out there, and thank Senator McCain, because Senator McCain, he stepped in and he helped the little guy, me. So anyways, just wanted to lead off with that, and this says, I trust this answers your inquiries, If not, please feel free to call me at the number referenced above. I didn't have any inquiries with them. I was educating them. And I'll maybe one of these days post the letters of me educating them and showing them all the case law, because they start out from the standpoint. And, you know, in one respect, I can't, you know, because they're taught this in school. They're taught this in college. And they're not taught all the case law. They're not taught the right thing. So you now know, you got this, you heard this right here. But I bet you if you went to your park and you tried to do your flint napping in your park where you're at, I bet you the police would show up and say, where's your business license? You can't sell that arrowhead you just made. You can't sell that painting that you just painted. But guess what? Long time ago, you know, we had these different art groups that would show up in parks, and they would paint gazebos in parks. They were created there so people could get up and do self-expressive activities. Get off your soapbox was a saying that came from people standing up on the soapbox and talking about things of religion or different things like that. Just because you pay somebody for a painting or something that's self-expressive, or an arrowhead in a frame that's trying to talk to somebody about their ancestors, their history, because they aren't just tools for hunting. Matter of fact, a lot of states it's illegal to use them as tools for hunting. They weren't just tools. They were also beautiful works of art. They were also in people's graves all over the world. So they're everybody's culture. They also have some speech that goes along with them. And nobody even has to be able to tell what that speech is, just like, you know, Schoenberg or Carroll or these other artists that are cited in these court cases, that nobody has to be able to tell what it is they're trying to say, just that they're trying to communicate something. So if you put it in a frame, you're just simply saying you're trying to convey a message to someone. If you take a chair like this chair right here, this chair, I sit on it every once in a while. It's early American for special occasions like this. I rarely sit on it because I'm a little heavy. I worry about it breaking, but it's a good, well-made chair. I have to make sure it's level ground. This chair, though it's artistic, it is not considered art, fine art. Somebody who makes this can't claim protective speech and sell it in the parks. But the same chair, if you took it like one in the Smithsonian Institute and you put it up on the wall, and you put a frame around and you put it there, now you remove the ability for somebody to sit on it, and you're displaying it in a manner that they're looking at it and somebody knows somebody's trying to say something. What are they trying to say? Now that same chair becomes fully protected speech. So anyways, I hope you learned something, and just let you guys know, John McCain contributed a little bit to flint napping being acknowledged as protected form of freedom of speech.